Okay, I think we're live for the 33rd edition now. Looks like I used the wrong banner, but the title of the show today is the value of data-centric information system design, and I have Stephen Macleod on the show today. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning. How are you going? Thank you for having me on.
No, and thank you for joining us. Stephen's dialing in all the way from New Zealand. I've had the pleasure of collaborating. I think it was over many years, because we had a more recent conversation where there was the pyramid of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, which generated some great discussions. But then I think when I went to speak to you on the chat, we realised I'd probably spoken to you 2 years before on another subject that we seem to agree on as well. So.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. But for the audience, you want to give yourself a bit of an intro?
Okay. Well, I've been sitting at my desk for 30 years, staring at a screen, trying to solve a data problem that has become data-centric information design. And I think a really good starting point for that is to talk about the value that it brings to the business. First, to begin with, data-centric information design is about designing operational information systems. These are systems that create data. So we're not talking about the modern data stack. We're not talking about analytics. We're talking about the starting point of data. And I would say that I think for some reason, it's not included in the modern data stack. I think it should be, and I think it's probably the missing link, and also the reason why the modern data stack is considered to be failing.
Yep, I totally agree, and I think I had Mr. Hawker, what was his name, from Ghana? I've forgotten his surname, but he was on the show the other day, and we were talking about the data starts on the operational systems, and our data world, our data bubble that we're able to interact with. The data's already been created. We've already missed the boat in many of these cases. So I'm really interested of how we can increase the domain of the modern data stack, or the data professionals to work closely with the operational systems and actually start thinking architecturally. I think this is the thing that's been missing is we just went and built stuff, and we didn't actually look what we were building.
yeah, exactly right. So more than 20 years ago, I did some projects in data warehousing, and I'm like, why am I fixing it here? Why are we not fixing it over here? Anyway, let's talk about the value that it brings to the business. I see that there's 3 layers of value. The first layer is the value it brings to IT, and that's extremely straightforward. It's more bang for your dollar. And the reason for that is there's less code, there's less data, there are fewer integration points, and there are fewer bizarre meetings that are hugely expensive and waste a lot of time trying to figure out workarounds. So IT is very straightforward. The next layer is the value that the data brings to the business. And for this conversation, let's split the operational systems into 2. We have one group which I like to call the mothership systems: ERP, CRM, HR, and all these industry-specific systems, which we call best of breed. We're just going to put those to one side for this conversation. For every mothership system, I see anecdotally 5 to 10 and often more much smaller systems. And these are app-centric systems. They're low quality, they're siloed, they're isolated, and they reproduce data a lot. This is what I believe is a really good starting point for targeting data-centric information design in the enterprise. Let's have a look at what's in these 2 systems. In the enterprise systems, in the mothership systems, these systems provide a record of your industry standard. This is software vendors saying, this is how your industry works. In these other systems, these smaller systems, these app-centric systems, these are the systems that contain your competitive advantage. This is the data that's got nowhere to go in the enterprise systems because you're doing something that is unique. It's your intangible asset.
Yeah.
And it's what separates you from your competitors.
Yeah. It's something the special sauce I referred to it as well. And
yeah,
and I think companies they go focus on these very costly, ERP projects, the CRM projects, but it's if what you've got there is probably working okay, or you can make it work okay. It's just the fact that you probably had a failed implementation of it, and it's easy to just go and try and buy another tool. I think, and the other thing that I've talked about in the past, and we're talking about the value thing, is that the value of an organization with competitive advantage, you're going to get higher multipliers for it. It's going to get a higher
force multiplier.
Exactly. You get that force multiplier piece.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go for it. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Well, also these enterprise systems, they generally, I'll use the word loosely, they're generally a waterfall. They have to be a fairly waterfall implementation. But these smaller systems, they can be agile. Now, here's the bit that this is the reason why I love doing this work. The people who are implementing or initiating these smaller systems, they are the innovators in the enterprise. They're the entrepreneurs. They've been given a mission from high up to solve a problem, and they just go about it and they just want to get it done. Whereas the enterprise systems, there's a much higher degree of bureaucracy and contract negotiation, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But I absolutely love working with these people. They're the business leaders who really want to shake things up, all the way down to the forklift driver. Go talk to the forklift driver, find out what they do, and they'll have a lot of wisdom to share. So the value of, but the problem with these smaller systems is they are app-centric. They're usually quite low quality. They're siloed. They're a driver for implementing the modern data stack, but they are very seldom a candidate.
Do you think the app-centric ones fall into the category of more smaller operational systems that are gluing things together? You mentioned siloed. Are they the ones that are closer to the business process of an organization? Because the CRM is a well understood onboarding a customer. What's different about every company is what business processes and the interaction between them,
and also the collection of systems in the enterprise is a bespoke collection.
Yes.
So you've got to take everything into account. So anyway, this is why I love doing this work. Get to work with some really fantastic people. So here comes the value of the business data to the enterprise. A data-centric system made well will raise the quality of the data up to the same level as the mothership systems, as the ERP systems. So now you've got industry standard data and competitive advantage data, which is a candidate for the modern data stack. Now they can flow together through the modern data stack in unison so that you get your full picture of what is happening in the enterprise. And that's the value of business data. But here's the real value. And I'd like to give a couple of examples, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we had a customer who was being sued by the government for not complying with regulations. And they were being sued for a few $1 million. And that actually was a very small problem. The real problem was that they produced $20 million worth of goods per month that were sitting in the yard. They couldn't sell it. But that wasn't the problem. The real problem was they had a class action suit against them, which would have sent them bankrupt. Now, this is a public company, by the way. It's on the public record, so I'm not giving away secrets. In reality, they were complying with the regulations, but they had app-centric systems all over the country. In one part of the country, they were measuring something in kilonewtons, and in another part of the country, they were measuring their output in megapascals, and nobody knew. So they had siloed, isolated, app-centric systems. We brought them together. It only took a few weeks. We brought them together into a data-centric system, and that's been running. First of all, the class action suit went away. Very quickly, the government could see that they were complying, and they were able to continue to sell their product. That's a real strong value of value to the business of data-centric design.
Yeah, and also, you know, when people try and put the value on the quality of data, you know, there's a great example of, you know, what can happen if you don't have the right metric checks or validation or quality rules checks on it to identify a misunderstanding of a wrong measure going in, because you've got tolerance levels of, you know, it can't be that amount because, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But
All that,
and it's great. Well, not for this company's case of what they had to go through, but as a referenceable reason of, you know, why should be addressing quality tools, and again, not addressing it in the modern data stack, addressing it in the source of record. You know,
absolutely.
We had our terms, datum invincible, which we were touched on as well. Is that, you know, immutable. I think it is the other word as well. Is you know, you need to make sure that it's correct at the first time of coming in. There's no point retro.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Correct at the point of data entry. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the value to the business that I see it. And let's talk. I think if we talk about how we got here, I don't want to talk about myself so much, but it shows the path from app-centric to data-centric. In the 90s, I decided to become a web developer. So I grew a hipster beard and bought some Doc Martens and set about learning web development. But I kept tripping over what I call the data problem. And it became very clear to me that web development was quite a trivial problem, and the real problem was data.
Yeah.
And I'd look around the IT department, and I couldn't see anyone who really understood data. Often the CIO, well, always actually, had a networking background or a project management background, which I found utterly bizarre. Like, the name is in the title. Information. And but also, if you take away data, there's no IT department. You're left with Gmail and Netflix. And so I set about learning about data, and I became very, very good at complaining about other people's systems. Oh, look at this data. God, it's such rubbish. And then I'd look at my own systems, and they were no better. So I wasn't really achieving anything. I was doing what everyone else was doing. And then I got into specializing in data migrations, which is, as you know, taking data out of an old system and putting it into a new system. And over time, I became interested in learning why the system had failed. And the project would give me a very clear understanding of why they were replacing the system, but they were giving me symptoms of why they were replacing it. And so while I was elbow deep in the data and the code, like really going where humans never go, I was looking for the cause of the failure. So they would say, "This we can't do this," and then I'd go and find the cause. And it's very super clear to me. I need to explain. I've done this on for my sins. I've done this on over 1,000 systems. So I've really had like across a dozen industries, from little access databases all the way up to SAP, ERP systems, Dynamics, CRM, but mostly on industry-specific best-of-breed systems. And it's really clear to me that there's two reasons why systems fail. The first is the data model. The business wanted to do this, but the data model wouldn't allow it. Well, when that happens, you've got the data model, the code, several layers of code, and the user interface and the integrations and all that sort of thing. So it's too much to change. So they go and spend $20 million on a new system. The second cause of failure was spaghetti code. But what causes spaghetti code is the data model. So my conclusion is the single greatest cause of failure of a system is what I used to call business process centric design. Designing systems around a very specific business process. Like the starting point, the first table, which was probably an Excel spreadsheet, was we're making X, Y, Z.
Yep.
The problem with that is I had a bias. I was only studying systems that had failed. So I started applying the same rigor of analysis to the target systems because I was elbow deep in that stuff as well. And what really astonished me was I could not see any difference. I couldn't see any difference between the 30-year-old JD Edwards system and the brand new ERP system.
Yep.
And
we mentioned on the call before that they're all like forked from an original
yes. Yeah. So fundamentally, there's been no radical redesign of the relational database since 1979. There's been a few attempts, like PeopleSoft. Well, like I've said, I've looked at 1,000 systems in great detail, and half a dozen stand out. PeopleSoft, Workday, same people. And very bizarrely, a high school teacher in Hong Kong has made a schools management system that he gives away to schools that can't afford it. And it is 100% data-centric and 100% perfect. And it's still around a specific industry, but it could very easily move. Super amazing. Anyway, where was I? So I learned. So I spent 30,000 hours doing this work, and I kind of like, I just got into a groove, and I really, really wanted to understand it. And so then I spent another 30,000 hours trying to work out how to solve it. So what we called business process centric now has a modern term, which is app centric. And what we've learned how to do has a term data centric, which actually has a bad definition. And part of the reason why I want to talk with you is so that we can start a process of defining it, giving it a good definition, because at the moment it's not quite right. But in order to do that, let's explain the difference between app-centric and data-centric. I see app-centric as a vertical stack of software. You've got your database layer, your code layer, and your UI layer. And encapsulated, and you can't really reuse anything in there. You've got to plug in a few integration points over the top. And it takes a very long time to create a high-quality system. So usually they produce low quality or average data. So that's app-centric. Data-centric, I see this as a set of concentric circles. And in the middle of the circle is the database, the data-centric information design. And on the outside of the first circle is your ring of code, which can be reused or added to. And then there's another circle. On the outside of that circle are your applications. So you can have many, many applications, but one database.
Okay.
And the enterprise only needs one data-centric system. Whether it's a large enterprise or a small one.
Yeah, and I fully support that. And again, in fact, thank you to Paul Sargent reminding the guy's name, Malcolm Hawker, who I was talking to. And we're at Day-to-Day Texas, and we're at a round table. Well, I think we're at an Indian restaurant. We're chatting around this table where do we see the operational world and the data world coming together?
It has to. Yeah,
it has to. But I think they've been gradually coming closer and closer together. I don't think they haven't gone far enough yet. I say it's the old days of data warehousing. It was, it was an afterthought. It was like a string that went across. You tell everyone all the things. Oh, we need to do this reporting stuff. We forgot those requirements. Can you build it now for us? Didn't have DR. Wasn't high availability. Was very expensive. Again, was probably knocked up by the business people, and it wasn't done in IT's sort of like domain at that point. And we've moved on, to the where we are now with the modern data stack, where we've got streaming data coming in. We've got data contracts to find. We understand. How where to source this data from, but it's still an afterthought, and the fact that we're redesigning something that is not. And you said that there's only so many industries out there. I'll use an example of an e-commerce company. They're going to have Shopify. They're going to have maybe HubSpot as a CRM. They'll probably have NetSuite maybe as a billing system. Apart from that, they'll have what you said, those app-centric ones. They're probably low-end sort of ERP sort of pieces, and they'll build the things around it. But
well, if it's a large enterprise, they'll have 10,000 Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, and that as well. The point I was going to make earlier is, when it becomes too difficult to put it becomes a spreadsheet, and it's now in a data, so it's in a process somewhere that no one actually knows, or it's in someone's head.
But we love Excel, by the way.
Yeah.
First of all, Excel is not a database, even though it's the #1 database in the world. But here's why Excel is so great. You have a business domain expert trying to solve a problem. They're innovative and they're entrepreneurial. And they know what they want. And they just want to get something done, so they get started. Well, and at some point that Excel becomes unmanageable. But what you have there is this target specification of the business requirement. And it comes with sample data. So that is a fantastic candidate for data-centric information design.
Yep.
To add that to your when the time is right, because there's some Excel that never causes a problem, but there's a lot of Excel that can cause serious problems for the business.
Security issues.
Instead of writing so you don't need to write a complex document about the requirements. Just look at the Excel, because the domain expert knows what they want. Now, there's systems out there that will import that Excel. That's just diabolical to me. I can't imagine that anyone thinks that's a valuable thing to do. The expert is saying, here is the solution to what I want. But as the data expert, you're thinking, here is an example of the problem. And now I'll go and design the solution. Anyway, I need to talk about the data-centric paradox. Because there's a problem with the definition. The definition says that we should separate the information layer from the applications. And so that when the application gets to the end of the life, you can just replace the application without having to replace the information layer. But what's very clear to me...
It's like an abstraction away from the underlying data model.
Yeah. It's a great idea, but it doesn't work because the cause of the problem is the information layer, not the application. So we can't just separate the information layer from the application layer. Because the problem is the information layer. So we can't just take an app-centric... There's a company out there that copies Salesforce into their data-centric system.
Right.
Well, you're just inheriting... Well, first of all, Salesforce is based on an accounting system. So you're inheriting an accounting system that you're going to go and reuse. Well, that's not going to work. So what needs to happen is the information layer has to be rethought and redesigned as a data-centric information layer. Otherwise, it won't work. And then you can lay as many applications on top as you want.
And John put this in there, and I was going to give microservices as an example. So John Cook, he's my neighbour, but we haven't managed to catch up to them here. So howdy, John. So kind of like what SOA was trying to do, but it failed because of the complexity within that SOA layer of doing all your metadata mapping. I mean, obviously microservices were the step after that. So how
I just can't see that. I can't see it ever working. Where's the starting point? I've completely forgotten about SOA. These things why do these things keep cropping up and disappearing? Because they're starting up here. They're not starting down here.
Right. So we're doing an application trying to go down to data rather than data trying to go up to the application. So basically, we're talking about metadata driven application development, basically. So we're defining the attributes, or actually the DDL definition, or what we want to do. They're defining layers around it of business context to it, where it's using business processes.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Metadata is the key to all of this. Except metadata has developed pronouns. It's just, how dare you call me technical metadata when I'm social metadata?
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I joke, but it's the metadata of meta. So we have metadata classifications now as well, and so of how it's being used.
So I think metadata, the definition of metadata, is a primary cause of the crisis that we have with data.
Yeah.
Here's my definition of metadata.
Yeah, go.
The top line of an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Now translate that to tables and columns.
Yeah.
Nothing more. It's not a label on a tin. It's not the information connected to a phone call. That's data. Now you can define anything however you want to define it. But if you want to do something useful, it's the top line of an Excel spreadsheet, or it's tables and columns. Well, for us, it's also stored procedures, functions, and because we treat our code as metadata as well.
So an interesting point. So I suppose where our business rules met. So if a business rule is machine readable and maybe machine generated, is that would be classed as metadata, though? Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay.
I think I would agree. It would. Well, with Occam and our data framework, our data model writes the code. So if you think about low-code systems, they create something up here to write the code, but they're not solving the data problem. We start with the data problem, and then we went, oh, we could use this to write the code. Oh, we could use this to write the reporting database.
So and in fact, I was just going to play through a scenario there. So say, for example, okay, right, I've gone for this data-centric approach. I've got my own CRM system, so I can actually evolve quicker than Salesforce, and I've got control of my own destiny. But also, I know I'm doing analytics for campaigns down elsewhere. So if I define this once in my central metadata repository, the code-centric repository, we go, right, okay, new attribute being added to this table, available on these forms, using this process, maps onto an analytical name of this, which is stored in this destination. Enter code. You've added a new row into your metadata, compiled it. It's gone through, updated either the microservices for it, upgraded the form to go and add that. Gone and added the new column. Even dealt. You can pattern this if it's a change to a column, being able to back up the table, make the change, add the other column onto it, or whatever to do to make sure that it was backwardly compatible, and ideally even go and add that attribute onto a dashboard and generate a new report there. So that's, I mean, that will be, if we get that, I'd love that. And I think that's how, I think, answer the question is, how do we get there? So, we both agree that this is the way that, businesses should be doing their system changes, operational and application at the same time.
Yeah. So, well, it's definitely possible. And also the attribute part of that story is straightforward. What I see, all the problems I see are around entity creation. Specifically, the many-to-many relationship. For some reason, people really struggle with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about how to become data-centric.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you can't just separate the app-centric information layer from the application layer. But I do believe that we need to have a lot more people thinking in terms of data-centric, so that, for example, we can come up with a really solid definition. Okay, so here's how I think here's how I think how to attack this problem from a data engineering viewpoint. And my starting point for that is I've got two mentors who are now in their 80s, and they've been mentoring me since the 90s, like almost 30 years. And the first is a guy called David White, who was teaching information system design at the School of Business at Auckland University, although he wasn't my teacher. So this guy's called David White, and this is White's law. And this should be, if you're interested in data, make this your screensaver. The better the data structure, the simpler the algorithm. The better the data structure, the simpler the algorithm.
Like it.
So the more effort you put into your data structure or your data model, the less code you're going to have to write.
The force multiplier effect that we touched on earlier.
Yep, we get. Yep, I'm busting to talk about that. Okay, now here's another guy, my other mentor, Ian McDonald, who actually suggested that I should become a programmer. And this is McDonald's law. Information is language, Oxford comma, and should be based on nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Information is language and should be based on nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And these two ideas came to me at about the same time. Very oddly, they are neighbors.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you've got a mate who's a neighbor.
Yeah, yeah.
Joe Reese has Joe
Matt.
Morrow, I think his name is, who's a neighbor.
Yeah. Salt Lake City.
If we form neighborhood groups around data, we may come up with a solution. Also, the guy who wrote our data engine is my neighbor. He lives up the road. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so there's two ideas, and I sat on those and fiddled with them for a while, and achieved nothing, as usual. Innovation is hard.
It is.
And then I had this little epiphany, which we're going to reproduce right now.
Yep.
And hopefully for some of you listeners, this is going to change the future of information design. So you've got oed.com open.
I'll share my screen on it. There we go. Let's do that. Present.
Before I mention when I've looked at all these systems, I haven't been able to see a pattern. I have been able to see a pattern, and that pattern is what Elon Musk calls design by analogy, which for data means going on the internet and copying a data model. And we're not, and what is needed, and this is what Data-Centric does, is it breaks down the design process using first principles of engineering. And so hopefully this is going to be a magical moment for a few of your listeners. Okay, so now type in the word noun, N-O-U-N. I'm having to squint and read out the first sentence.
A word used as a name or designation of a person, place, or thing. The class of a category of such words in early use frequently with qualifying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that changed my life. Yep. And hopefully it's going to change some people's lives here. The starting point for designing data-centric information systems is people, place, and things.
Yep.
Because customer, patient, employee is a modified noun. And the pattern of modified nouns becomes too complicated.
Yep.
Now, why are people, place, and things important? So now we're looking at a pattern. These are all the things that happen outside of the business. You have people inside the business, but you have a relationship with them. Their entity, of the essence of who they are, sits outside of the business.
Yeah.
The owner sits outside of the business. The essence of we could change who we are, this conversation could be between Christina and Stephanie,
Mm-hmm.
but we would essentially still be the same person.
Yeah.
We might change our gender, we might change our name,
But the persona that we're working
correct?
on is the same.
Yes, yeah, the entity is the same.
It's
So,
when we used to use we used to have debates of whether you'd have a customer table and a supplier table, and
yeah,
your customer can also be your supplier, and then
absolutely. Yeah.
and it
Okay,
becomes it's a party rather than actually
okay.
yeah, yeah.
So I think party is a hack, to be
Right.
honest.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, it actually works okay, but why is that concept not reproduced throughout all the different types of things?
True. True. Yeah.
Um, Also, the problem with party, well, the problem with a relational database is it's not relational; it's hierarchical.
Yeah.
And which is what the knowledge graph is trying to solve,
Yeah.
and that's what we've solved with the Occam data framework.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this thing that we call the sphere of the infinite hierarchy.
Yeah.
So literally, whatever it is that you're looking at is at the top of the hierarchy. And so you never ever get. So the party model is still a hierarchy,
Yeah.
and it's a false record of the world we live in, which is the purpose of data, is to
Yeah.
record, is to accurately record our physical world.
Yeah.
Anyway, people, place, and things is the starting point for designing data-centric systems. And now the reason, so you talked about, do you have a customer or supplier table?
Yeah.
And I don't believe you do, and here's why. Data should be objective, not
Mm-hmm.
subjective.
Yeah.
Another way of saying that is data should be explicit and not implied.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with CRM systems is they say, this person is a customer of ours,
Mm-hmm.
and ours is never described. It's implied because we own the database.
It's the relationship. Yeah.
And yes, so a customer is something you do, not something you are.
Mm-hmm.
Same with a supplier.
Yep.
And you want to start with the thing that you are, not the thing that you do.
Yeah.
Because the thing that you do, as you say, will change. Sometimes you're a supplier, sometimes you're a customer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a employee, sometimes you're a customer. Sometimes you're a contractor.
Yeah.
How many employment systems have you seen where you can't be employed twice? It's astonishing.
Yeah.
And now, what's the reason why this is important? First of all, people, place, and things do not change. They're very slowly changing. We will always be Homo sapiens. For place, the latitude and longitude, this will always be the latitude and longitude. What happens there might change,
Mm-hmm.
but XY will always be the same. So you're building a solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come to building your business process, it's like changing the curtains.
Yep.
You're not fundamentally changing the structure of your system. Now, if you go through this process, so I read so much on LinkedIn, and I get quite grouchy, to be honest. It's data. Data is sorry.
I used to. I've calmed down a bit recently, but there's some interesting views and yeah,
Yeah,
it can get you back up sometimes.
yeah. Well, they say, oh, it's a people first. It's a people first. Data is a people first problem. It's a 100% engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And the trivial part of the engineering process is, well, actually the fun part. This is the thing that I really like. It's got nothing to do with data. It's about changing the world, really,
Mm-hmm.
and working with great people. But it's part of the technology. It's part of the engineering process. So that's how you. That's how do you, if you want to start designing a data-centric systems. Oh no, if you go through the first principles of engineering,
Mm-hmm.
you will always come to the same answer: people, place, and things.
Yep.
It doesn't. For example, we have a customer, a publishing company with 2 staff, and we have New Zealand's largest retailer with, well, it's big for New Zealand. They have 11 or 12,000 staff, and the answer is the same. It's implemented differently, but sorry, it's not implemented differently. It's used in different ways because their business process is different.
Yeah.
But
It's still
it's implemented the same.
Yeah, hooking onto the same things that are there, just the order in which they're on. And
Yeah.
so,
So what I think.
do I need the OE? Anything else to search on here, or was that just the one?
No, just that. Although we don't want to go down a rabbit hole. But what I see happening is systems are designed around adjectives.
Mm-hmm.
And an adjective is a description of a modified noun, and that's what a
Okay.
customer is. But business is in a constant state of change, and the adjectives, the description of the business, is constantly changing. So that's why you do the adjectives last.
So an interesting, we've talked about, it was things and things. Well, let's break that down. So most people sell things; they're selling products.
Yeah.
So, and what a PIM does, or master data management, it's meant to solve that things problem. Whether it does. So the people problem is meant to be solved by your CRM. The things is meant to be solved by your PIM. And the location, I think that's probably a shared responsibility, and no one's claiming that they're solving that problem. But the question I had was, when we start talking about things, so where does reference data come into it? And I've had these debates with other people where, and I've had some good views of what's reference and what's master data. So are we saying that things is that a correct definition in your way? When you talk about things, we talk about master data or product data?
I do have an answer for that, but I want to make fun of people at other people's expense of customer master data. Boy, is that not the epitome of failure?
Yeah.
20 years ago, we had CRM. This is going to be the single point of truth, the single version of truth, and that failed. And then we went to data warehousing. Data warehousing is going to provide you with the single version of truth, and that failed.
Yeah.
And so then we went to all the data, this and that, mesh, lake, whatever. That hasn't worked. And so now we've got customer MDM. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the problem is the concept of a customer.
Yeah, I think so. And we are, and the modern data stack is meant to be dead now as well, with the latest things on LinkedIn and on that. Yeah, and we keep killing things off because of failed approaches. But an interesting. I want to throw this concept out here as well. And it was something I actually scribbled in the middle of the night. I scribbled it on the next of my bed because I kept talking about the operational world doesn't keep talking about reinventing itself. It may be some little
amazing.
It's an operating system. It has a CRM feature, it has an ERP feature, it has a banking feature, and that's it. It's an operational system. I think the other side is we have a data system, a data operational platform, a data platform. Let's stop calling it reinventing it. It's a data. What you're using to implement it, even if it's a Hadoop or anything, it is your data platform. And as with you may be swapping out Siebel to another CRM system. You're not rebadging it and something. You're just saying I'm updating that feature. And I think that's where we need to be thinking about in the data world is the platform's there. It's defined as a platform that has certain capabilities and features. We stop naming it under the technology, and then it's going to be a lot easier to swap these things out as we go. And also, it's going to be a lot easier to put the two things together. So what we're talking about here now is, operational world, analytical world. It's one world, one team, one business, one definition of the data. One mapping a mapping that maps it to your whole business process from your operational use to your analytical use.
So here's why I think people think the modern data stack is failing.
Yeah,
they're adding layers of complexity over the top of the source of the problem. So it's just the addition of complexity without simplifying the problem. And here's why I think that is happening. A couple of weeks ago, I counted up my LinkedIn threads talking about data. I had 370 threads. Every single one of them was about the analytics. about the modern data stack.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the operational data modeling part of the world, the place where data is created,
Yeah.
is a no-go area.
Yeah.
And this is why I want to have this conversation, because this is
So,
where we can solve the problem.
yeah, and it's a great observation, and I fully agree with it. And I've been talking about hierarchies in an organisation, and Conway's law as your data model should reflect how your business operates, but also your organisation structure should reflect how you operate. And you mentioned earlier about the CIO, not knowing about data, and it's probably because the definition of what was thought about the CIO, it really was, not really the one guy looking after the information. It's probably a CTO that just got a CIO title. It was fancier, and
Yeah.
I think that the point that we're going to be able to solve this is when the C-suite, and I'm talking about at the top level, the CEO understands, okay, I don't need a chief data officer, a chief information officer, a chief technical officer. I need probably a chief product officer that's going to be a product, an internal product, which is building me my operational analytical platform roadmap together in unison, accountable for both pieces of the puzzle. They've done define a roadmap, releases are aligned, you do the change here, it happens here, it is one team, one approach, one data model that you're working towards.
Here's why I don't think that's going to work. It should work, but here's the problem that needs to be overcome. And I think this is a pretty good example.
Yeah.
The Gartner Magic Quadrant.
Oh yeah, don't yeah.
Well, this is where CIOs get their advice.
Yep, I know.
So go and look at these systems. So here's an example. There's a significant system in the Gartner Magic Quadrant that does not enforce referential integrity. That's not the problem. That is a problem. The problem is Gartner don't know to go and have a look.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that operational information design background.
Yeah.
Or they think, you have conversations with these people and they go, oh yeah, I built a system 25 years ago when I was at university. It's really good. That type of thing.
Actually, I've been doing some analysis looking at Forrester and Gartner to help a client, because they're only going to go and say, well, what do they say? So I'm actually referencing what they say about each of those things, but also giving our own view and actually a blended view of where both of them are coming from. But the other issue about all you got to do is look who sits on the board for Gartner. Larry from Oracle, so, and then you have to look at how well their product scores. So I'm not going to say that there's any correlation there, but there is that trust factor, and if Gartner is, as you say, steering our C-suite at the moment, maybe the first thing is educating the C-suite is Gartner's not the be all and end all. It's an indicator, maybe a barometer, giving you an idea, but don't take it verbatim. Do your own analysis.
Yeah, but how do you do your own analysis when all my LinkedIn threads are about analytics and not about Codd's law or normalization, that sort of thing? I'd like to talk about how the enterprise can get started. So technically, how to get started is to start designing people, place, and things first. The record of the world. This is turning everything we learned up the right way.
Yep.
Everything we've learned about information systems says do top-down analysis and bottom-up analysis. The bit they forget to say is, and don't literally translate that into a data model. There has to be some level of abstraction. So we turn it up the other way. Start by recording the world and then start applying the business process. That's how you get started technically. But what's important is, what do you target? How do you get started? It's not the mothership systems. It's the 10,000 Excel spreadsheets or the 200 low-quality app-centric systems. And you mentioned MDM. Actually, we never got back to reference data. Sorry about that. But
That's right.
So here's a really good example that I've come across quite a few times, and that is product master data. Well, when you implement the idea of product master data is you end up with a single version of truth of the product, but but again, it's someone else's understanding of product, and it doesn't take into account your bespoke ecosystem of data. So you will always end up with data that won't fit into product MDM. And what I've seen is, well, actually, a company had 5 systems managing product. They implemented product MDM, and now they have 8. That's a really good starting point for Data-Centric. Just accept that you're not going to fit everything into product MDM and start nibbling away at those other systems. They're usually point solutions. They only do 1 or 2 things. When you look at them at the viewpoint of data, they're not doing anything super complicated. It's just data. It's boring data. Data should be boring. It's the outcome that's interesting, and the relationships, that sort of thing. So nibble away at that. Now you might have 300 of these systems, but after a few months, you'll have 295. Well, that's a significant change, because I think that what we've achieved is the exponential curve of complexity. If you've taken away 13 integration points, you've you've solved something, and then find another 5. And then there'll be a business leader who's given a mission, but part of that mission is a data problem. Use that as a data-centric solution. So that's how to get started.
I did a presentation with Skid, and I was talking about you have your strategic vehicles that help your architecture runway. So use business initiatives that need to be achieved and their funding to actually build out your architecture, tackling some of these problems, but at the same time delivering for them. So working smarter, not harder, and doing it in a way that you're going to get business buy-in, get strategic support, and that trust factor.
Well, you're going to have to but now the enterprise has to find a person who's going to do this. And here's how I suggest this happens. Well, first of all, you use someone like Occam, because we've worked out how to do it. There must be, I'm sure there's other companies out there, but I haven't come across them. The starting point is if you want to do it inside the enterprise, the starting point is to find somebody who is very good at Kimball. Because Kimball is a very close cousin of Data-Centric. Keeping in mind, Kimball is data warehousing, not operational information systems. Take them off data warehousing and let them experiment. You might have to experiment for a year or 2 to work out how to do it. But that's the closest thought process that I can find to start data-centric information design.
I just got there's a comment from Paul. So is object-oriented the root of all evil? Maybe it's been shaping the thing of audio. Is that? I think well, maybe it's not. It was there to solve another problem, but cause another problem. I think this is with everything we've been doing, and we've been doing lots of little point solutions, and I call it the balloon effect. All we do is push the problem somewhere else. So
I think every single thing that comes out in IT in terms of data, I think has great value. With a data-centric information design, so programmers are very good at programming, and I look at what they do, and I'm just like, man, that is so fantastic. And I'm going to get offside with some people here. They're not very good at data. They don't read databases for dummies. So keep them creating their beautiful mobile apps, their fantastic applications, definitely writing OO code, which I haven't done for 20 plus years, so I can't actually remember much about it, but I'm aware of it. Let the Kimball data guy do the data layer, or a tool like Occam. But just keep them writing applications. That's what they're interested in. That's what they're very good at. So I would think that I would say the root of all evil is application-centric data modeling.
Yep.
And not reading databases for dummies.
Yeah,
Obviously, I've read a lot more than that, but databases for dummies gets you 80% of the way there.
yeah.
Except just sorry.
Yeah, I remember. I think microservices. I think was another. I suppose solving a problem, but creating another problem. So
Yeah.
that bottleneck of so the bus, everyone getting onto it and getting deployments and version control and things like that. We went the microservice route, but again, then we forgot that we hadn't actually defined these. They're all creating their own tables, no referential integrity between them.
Right.
Maybe different databases. Again, I think that started the erosion, I think, in operational systems of really having bad data model, which then was carried on into the modern data stack era, where again we had some diabolical data models.
Yeah.
So we're approaching time, and I've got a hard stop at this. I've got to go and do another. I've got a work call after as well. But I mean, this has been an interesting debate, and as you see, we didn't even have to go back to the bullet points that went out.
We never got there. Sorry.
No. It doesn't matter. We can discuss it online at another time. But for the audience out there, I suppose it'd be good to let them know where they can find you. Obviously, you're on LinkedIn, but
Occam.works is the website for our framework.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul's
we never got to talk about the force multiplier. That's the most important thing.
Okay, well, we got 2 minutes on the force multiplier. Then let's go for it.
Okay, so here's what I see happening. You implement let's say a CRM system, and you immediately get value. That's great.
Yep.
And then 3 months later, you want to make a change. It's a bit hard. That's going to cost you 5K. 8 months later, you want to make your third change. Well, that's going to cost you 60K.
Yep.
Because the design keeps getting in the way.
Yep.
So I call that the force multiplier to the power of -2.
Yeah. It's the opposite way around. We talk about force multiplier making it better.
Yeah.
I call it friction. I refer to it as friction.
Friction is a great word. Yeah.
So you're adding friction to your process. The more complex you add to it, the more friction to it, which means there's more cost to deliver.
Yeah. Why are we having this crazy meeting for the 10th time trying to figure this out? And why is it going to cost 50K? It's a simple thing that we want.
And it has no documentation, that thing as well, probably.
Yeah. Data-centric design is the force multiplier. The next thing you want, you're 60% of the way there. The next thing you want, you're 75% of the way there.
Yep.
The next thing, you're 90% of the way there. Because you're not inhibited by this thing. Well, actually, they're not customers. They're going to be partners. Or they're part of my network. They're not a customer. I just want to record networking.
Yeah.
And because CRM, I'm not interested in CRM, by the way. It's just everyone understands it. Well, CRM is specifically a sales funnel. That's all it really fundamentally does when you look at the data model. And then the force multiplier, I feel like we've kind of got the ultimate force multiplier. The data model writes the code. The data model creates the reporting database. And here's the funny one. The data model creates itself. Our data model creates our integrated development environment. So it all just... one thing does many, many, many things.
Metadata driven. On the last one, I'll close this one. But the force multiplier example I've been using as well. It's about building your roadmap. And the example I gave was how you can build the infrastructure to allow you to get your skiers to the top to do the black diamond slopes. You build it up over time. You put the first lift in. That enables you to do these use cases. That gets you the funding for this. So everything becomes a force multiplier. And the analogy I use is, the penthouse apartment's only worth 25 million because it's got 49 other floors underneath it. So
good point.
You build the point on there is that then you get the high value stuff is achievable because you've done all the other things.
Actually, I didn't understand that, but I do now. That the $25 million penthouse has a $300 million worth of infrastructure below it.
Exactly it.
Mm. It's a
Exactly it.
bargain. It's a
Yeah,
bargain.
it's a bargain. It's a bargain.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, I mean, what I'll just do, I'm just going to show. So next week we've got the value of the data truth bomb. Jesse Anderson, who was at Day-to-Day Texas last in January. No, January it was now. But yeah, he gave a great presentation, and probably some of the things you've been talking about here, Stephen. He'll be trying to how we change people's views in this data world to help us achieve what you're talking about, becoming more data centric. So fantastic talking to you. I knew it would be a good one. I knew we wouldn't be running out of stuff to say. I'll be in touch. I hope to catch up again soon. If you're ever in London or New York, one of those two places, let me know. If I'm ever in New Zealand, I'll let you know. But we'll let you.
Oh, come watch the All Blacks.
Yeah, maybe.
We live nearby.
Okay, all right. I'll put it on my route. But yeah. So thanks everyone for tuning. Great chat, and I hope to see you next week.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.